Today we're going to talk about how to safely light a Bunsen burner. A Bunsen burner is used in chemistry, sometimes in biology and other sciences. It's an important piece of equipment, but it's also important to understand how to use it safely. For the in-person students, you're going to write these instructions in your lab notebook. For those of you who are in virtual, you're going to write them and save them into your computer, save them into your files. Make sure that you keep these for if you take any other science classes that you might use them. The lab we are going to be using Bunsen burners for is a flame test lab. We're going to be looking at different chemicals and their emission spectra, which will give us a bit of an idea about the atomic structure within the metals. In order to do that, we will have to first light a burner, which will provide the energy necessary for the electrons to jump up energy levels to then give off light as they fall back down. Each student who is in person will light the Bunsen burner in front of me, and I will check off that you've done it safely and appropriately. Once you've been checked off, you'll be able to light the burner on your own from that point forward for any labs that we might need it. Let's go head over to lab and look at how to safely light a Bunsen burner. When you're setting up to light your Bunsen burner, you want to make sure that your table area is free of anything that is flammable. You also want to make sure that your valves are closed and that when you attach your burner to the valve, you want it to set level. In order to set level, you can twist the ends of the burner to help get it to set level. You want it to set level and stable so that it won't get knocked over. You also want to make sure it's at least a hand's width away from any table edge, either the edge of the table or the edge of the sink on the inside. The first thing you want to do when you get your Bunsen burner is to make sure that your hose is connected completely and snugly onto the burner. The hose should come up to and against the end here. If it's not, you want to make sure you tighten it up before you do anything else. The top part of the burner is your air valve. You want to make sure that it is all the way down to start. You do not tighten it, just turn it down until it stops rotating. That is all the way closed. This bottom part here is our needle valve. This is what lets the gas in and out. This valve you want to make sure is all the way up for closed. Air valve is down for closed, gas valve is up for closed. After you've made sure your air valve and your needle valve are closed, you'll want to connect your burner to the gas supply. So you want to push it on until it's snug, but you don't want it so tight that you won't be able to get it off. The next step is to level your Bunsen burner. You can twist the ends of the hoses, and that will help you get it to set level. You'll have to play around a little bit with this before you can get a feel for how to set it level. You want to make sure that your burner is not near any edges of the table. So generally a good rule of thumb is about a hand's width from any table edge, including the sink at the center. The first thing you're going to want to do with the striker is make sure that the flint and the strike plate are away from you when you're holding it, so that when you work it over the burner, it will be pointing down or to the side so that it is easier to get a spark into the burner to ignite it. If you are right-handed, to work the striker, you're going to use your thumb to push down on this end of the striker. Your fingers will pull backwards on it as you're squeezing it. So your thumb will push forward, your fingers will pull back, and as you squeeze it, it will generate a spark. For those of you that are left-handed, you're going to do basically the opposite. You're going to push down with your fingers and push up with your thumb, but your thumb is the one going to work the flint. What I've found is even for people who are left-handed, they tend to find it easier to work the striker with their right hand and use the burner with their left hand. Now that we've looked at the different parts of the burner and we've got it connected to our gas valve, we're ready to start lighting it. I'm going to have my striker in one hand and I'm going to use the other hand to light the Bunsen burner. For me, I've found that it's easier for me to work the striker with my right hand and the burner with my left hand. The first step to light a Bunsen burner is to open the gas valve at the source. You're going to turn it so that the gas valve points the same direction as your hose. So that is open. It's parallel to the valve. So now I have gas coming into my hose. Because we closed the needle valve earlier, it is stopping the gas from coming out of my burner. I'm going to start by slowly opening the needle valve, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to work the striker. If I get a good spark and it doesn't light, it means I need to open the needle valve a little more. So let's start. I'm going to open it a little bit. I got a good spark, it didn't light, so I need to open it a little more. So now the burner is lit. We need to adjust the air. This is not a good flame for a Bunsen burner. We need to adjust the air until we see two distinct blue cones and no yellow. So we're going to open the air valve. So all of the yellow is gone, but I don't quite see the two distinct cones yet. So we'll go a little bit further. This is a good flame. We'll look at it a little closer here in just a second. If you open your air valve too much, you can actually hear the flame roaring. It means it's getting too much air. You need to close the air down a little bit. Now that I've got the air adjusted, I want to cover a couple quick safety notes. You never want to reach over a burner because you will burn yourself. It's good to get into the habit, even if a burner is off, never to reach over it. Another important safety note is someone, when a burner is lit, needs to be within arm's reach of the valve and the burner at all times. Once a burner is lit, someone is to be tending it at all times. It is never to be left alone when it is lit. The reason being, if something were to happen or the burner were to be knocked over, someone is within arm's reach and can turn the gas off immediately. Speaking of turning a burner off, the first step to turning a burner off is to use the source valve and turn it off there first. So you want to turn it until the hose is perpendicular. Once it's off there, then I'm going to close the needle valve gently. You don't want to tighten it, you just want to turn it till it's closed, and do the same thing with the air. Once everything is closed down, I can disconnect my hose and my burner is out of use. You do want to avoid the top parts of the burner. They do tend to get hot. When you're adjusting the air, you want to focus down here at the part at the bottom. Let's take a little bit closer of a look at the steps to light a Bunsen burner so you can get a better idea of the parts of the burner as they're being used, as well as working the striker. First step is to open the valve at the source. So we want that pointing parallel to the valve. So our gas is now flowing into our Bunsen burner. I've made sure my needle valve is already closed and my air valve is closed down. I slowly open the needle valve and work the striker. If I get a good spark and it doesn't light, then I need to open my needle valve a little more. So now I'm getting a flame, but I don't want the yellow. I want two distinct blue cones. So I'm going to open my air. I'm going to touch it down here at the bottom because this is the place that's least likely to be hot. I'm going to keep adjusting until I can see two distinct blue cones, and I know it's a little hard to see in the camera. I'm going to pause and we'll lift it up so you have a darker background and it's a little easier to see. From this angle, it's a little easier to see the outside of the flame. On the inside, you should actually just start to see a little bit more of a blue color. That's that inner cone that we need. So we have both the outer cone, which is the lighter version, and the inner cone, which is a little more rich of a blue. Another important bit of information for this, once we have our flame properly adjusted, our flame height should be between 3 and 5 inches. We don't want a really tall flame, or we don't want a really small flame either. 3 to 5 inches is usually the sweet spot for setting up the flame for a Bunsen burner. After we've completed our experiment, it comes time to turn the burner off. Remember, we never want to reach over the burner. We always want to step to the side to where we can reach the valve without coming over top of it so we don't burn ourselves. We always turn the gas off at the source first. That way it burns out the last bit of gas that might be in the hose, and once all that gas is consumed, the flame will go out. After I've turned it off at the source, I give it a minute or two to cool, and then I close the needle valve. I don't tighten it, I just close it till it stops turning, and then I do the same thing with the air valve. Now remember, the top of the air valve will be warm, so you want to only touch the air valve near the bottom. And again, I don't tighten it, I just turn it until it stops. Once I've finished with that, I can disconnect my hose from the gas valve, and I'm ready to clean up the rest of my experiment.